The air hung thick with anticipation, a cocktail of joy and nervous energy. The day was meant to be one of celebration, a moment etched forever in the annals of a family's history, the birth of a child. But instead, it would become a dark stain, a brutal fracture in the timeline of their lives. The story begins not with a baby's first cry, but with a man's vanishing, a disappearance so complete, so baffling, that it would unravel into a 6-month odyssey of grief, desperation, and finally, a horrifying discovery. This is the story of a man who vanished on his way to witness the birth of his daughter, and the gruesome reality that would shatter his family's world. The man, let's call him David, was a husband, a father-to-be, and a son. His life, like most, was a mosaic of everyday moments. The comfort of a familiar morning routine, the laughter shared at dinner, the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. He was a man on the precipice of a profound transformation, readying himself to embrace the responsibilities and boundless love that fatherhood promised. His wife, Sarah, was weeks away from delivering their first child, a precious daughter who would bind them together in an even deeper connection. Family was everything to David, a bedrock of support and the source of his greatest joy. The thought of missing the birth of his daughter was unthinkable. David, in his late 20s at the time, was known for his steady nature and his deep affection for his wife and soon-to-be child. He worked diligently as a skilled tradesman, his hands capable of building and repairing, a reflection of his desire to provide and protect. His parents, who lived nearby, doted on him, and the anticipation of becoming grandparents had brought an extra sparkle to their lives. The family lived in a rural community, nestled amongst rolling hills and fields. Their home, a modest farmhouse, was a sanctuary filled with the aroma of home-cooked meals and the sounds of children's laughter, though at this point, the house was filled with the quiet anticipation of the first child. The surrounding landscape was one of serene, almost timeless beauty, where the rhythm of the seasons dictated the flow of life. The barn, a sprawling structure weathered by years of sun and rain, stood a short distance from the house. Its aged timbers whispered stories of generations of farming, of animals housed and harvests stored, of the quiet solitude of the countryside. It was a place of work, of storage, of the quiet solitude of the countryside. Little did anyone know, it would also become the final, gruesome resting place of their beloved David. The air here, usually carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming wildflowers, would soon be thick with a chilling dread. The timeline is brutally simple, a stark contrast to the chaotic emotional landscape that would engulf the family. The day arrived, the day Sarah went into labor. David, filled with a mix of excitement and nerves, set out to be by his wife's side. He kissed Sarah goodbye, promising to be back as soon as possible, a familiar ritual in their lives, but this time imbued with an urgency and profound significance. He was driving his trusty pickup truck, a vehicle as dependable as he was, along the winding country roads that were as familiar to him as the back of his hand. But he never arrived. As hours ticked by, turning into an agonizing day, then a night, panic began to set in. David was not answering his phone. His calls went straight to voicemail, a digital void where his voice should have been. He wasn't at the hospital, where Sarah, increasingly worried, was surrounded by her own family and the concerned medical staff. The calls to friends and family yielded nothing but shared anxiety and a growing, gnawing fear. Something was terribly wrong. A search was initiated immediately. Family and friends, their faces etched with worry, combed the familiar roads, fields, and wooded areas, their voices calling out David's name, their eyes scanning for any sign, any clue, a discarded piece of clothing, a broken branch, anything that might offer a hint of his whereabouts. They plastered the area with flyers bearing David's face, a smiling portrait of a man who had simply vanished into thin air, his image becoming a poignant symbol of their collective despair. The quiet community, usually a place of peaceful routines, was now a tableau of frantic searching and hushed whispers of worry. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. The initial frenetic energy of the search began to wane, replaced by a growing sense of dread, a suffocating blanket of hopelessness. The silence, once a comforting backdrop to their lives, now echoed with the unbearable absence of David. Sarah, Now a mother herself, a role thrust upon her in the most tragic of circumstances, struggled to find. She clutched her newborn daughter, a tiny, innocent being, a constant, living reminder of the father she would never know. Every milestone in the child's life, every smile, every coo, was tinged with the profound sorrow of the missing presence. Every holiday, every birthday, every moment that should have been filled with the warmth of family togetherness, was instead marked by the bitter taste of loss and the unanswerable question of what had happened. The once vibrant farmhouse felt hollowed out, its rooms echoing with the ghost of David's laughter. 6 months passed. The hope that had sustained the family during the early days, a fragile ember in the face of overwhelming odds, began to fade, reduced to a faint flicker. Yet, they still held onto a sliver of belief, a desperate prayer that somehow, someway, David would return, emerging from the shadows as inexplicably as he had vanished. Then the unthinkable happened. A family member, perhaps needing a specific tool or item stored in the barn, went to the sprawling structure, a routine errand they had done countless times before, a task as mundane as unlocking the door. They found David, or what remained of him. His body, shockingly and gruesomely, had been discovered inside, decapitated. The horror of the discovery was compounded by the brutal nature of the violence inflicted. The impact on the family was immeasurable, a devastation that went far beyond the initial shock of his disappearance. They had already endured the agony of David's vanishing act, the torturous uncertainty of not knowing his fate, the sleepless nights filled with imagined scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. Now, they faced the brutal, undeniable truth of his murder, the confirmation of their deepest fears in the most horrific way imaginable. The discovery of his body brought a new wave of grief, a fresh wound that would take years, perhaps a lifetime, to heal. They were forced to confront the unimaginable. That someone, a person known or unknown to them, had committed such a heinous act, an act of such savage cruelty. Their sense of security, their belief in the inherent goodness of the world, in the safety of their home and their community, was irrevocably shattered. The joyful anticipation of parenthood, once a beacon of light, had been extinguished, replaced by a suffocating nightmare that continued to haunt their waking hours and invade their dreams. Sarah, already burdened with the immense responsibility of raising a child alone, now carried the additional weight of a violent tragedy that had robbed her daughter of her father and her own life of its intended joy. The case remains open, a cold case file gathering dust in a forgotten corner of a police station. There have been no arrests, no convictions, no closure for the grieving family. The killer, or killers, are still out there, free to roam, their dark secret hidden within the vast, indifferent rural landscape that once represented peace and tranquility. The family continues to grapple with the unanswered questions, the haunting images etched into their minds, and the ever-present, gnawing sense of loss that time can never truly erase. The daughter, now growing up without a father, will forever carry the indelible weight of this tragedy, a shadow cast over her life from its very beginning. She will learn of her father's love through stories and memories shared by her devoted mother and doting grandparents, but she will never experience the warmth of his embrace, the guidance of his hand, or the sound of his voice speaking her name. The barn, once a symbol of rural life and hard work, now stands as a silent, chilling monument to a life brutally extinguished, a constant reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places. The story of David's disappearance and death serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life, the thin veil between normalcy and unspeakable horror that can exist beneath the surface of the seemingly ordinary. It is a testament to the enduring power of grief, the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable loss, and the relentless, though sometimes unfulfilled, pursuit of justice. The case remains a chilling example of how a life can be stolen in an instant, leaving behind a trail of devastation that reverberates through generations, a wound that may never truly close.